Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, and it is time for another mailbag where I answer your questions, your observations, your hot takes, and ultimately your comments on tennis and other things. But this week I gave you a theme, a specific question to respond to. The last mailbag, I asked, who are your favorite players to watch? This time, I asked you guys, who are your least favorite players to watch? Coming full circle. Paying it off. There's going to be a lot of silliness in this. You know, don't take anything too seriously. If you're watching and you're a player and you have thin skin, just don't skip this one. This one's one to skip. Now, I do wonder if there was a video like, who are your least favorite tennis YouTubers? Would I have the discipline to not watch that? I don't know if I would or not, but in an ideal world, I wouldn't watch a video that said that. Anyway, quick shout out to PlayYourCourt, the place to go if you're looking for a local coach, practice partner, or match. I just hit this morning through PlayYourCourt, actually, and I learned that I got to work on my volleys. It's shameful state of affairs with my volleys right now. And if you need to work on your volleys, like me, again, PlayYourCourt will be your best friend. I've arranged a special discount for you, www.playyourcourt.com/Gill Gross. The link is in the description. 50% off to join the PlayYourCourt community by using my special offer. First one is from Andrew Torres. From a playing style / aesthetic standpoint, I don't find many players to be boring, for lack of a better term. For me, least favorite to watch would be Zverev. The off-court issues aside, which I do find problematic, I agree with others that he is wildly inconsistent at times, prone to mood swings, umpire abuse, arguing on calls, complaining about opponents. I find him to be extremely off-putting, though I understand his antics makes for good drama and content. Yeah, so Zverev was the player who was definitely the most popular response to this question. And he's definitely off the court and on the court given fans probably more reasons to not like him than anyone else, objectively, you know, with the allegations of domestic abuse and now the latest being the worst example I've seen, and I made a YouTube short about this that was pulled off for copyright reasons. The worst example I've seen of a player physically threatening an umpire. And there are some instances, and I'm referring to what happened in Acapulco after he lost doubles with his partner Melo. There have been instances like Karolina Pliskova hit the bottom of the chair, and it was a very tall chair, and she hit the bottom, which was terrible and bad, but not quite to the length of there was a pole. The only thing separating Zverev and the chair umpire's shin was, one pole. And, the umpire was literally flinching. If you look at his legs, he was flinching because Zverev's racket was coming, again, dangerously close to his legs. And Zverev, in this case, was actually upset with the umpire, which I think if you combine intent and the action, that is what made that so ugly, right? You have what Shapovalov did. I think it might have been Davis Cup. I don't know. But when he hit the umpire in the eye, he wasn't mad at the umpire. He just was really dumb and reckless. When Djokovic hit the lines judge, wasn't mad at the lines judge, just upset with how he was playing at that moment. And then, Nalbandian kicking the umpire's the lines judge's chair in Queens in that final a couple years back. Again, Nalbandian not mad at the lines judge, just not controlling his rage. The Zverev thing, again, that's the worst behavior I've ever seen towards an umpire. But it's also off the court, there's been so many relationships that have gone sour with Zverev, and that's also kind of been part of it to me. Not to mention this sort of popular kid in high school confidence and arrogance, which can be really attractive and captivating if you back it up. And we've seen that in the fight game, and I know I make a lot of analogies to the fight game, right? But Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather, that kind of cocky, arrogance, kind of calling your shot, saying you're the man, it can actually be pretty cool if you back it up, which is harder to do in tennis than it is in the fight game. But I mean, Zverev was in court with his agent, messy public breakup with Juan Carlos Ferrero, messy public breakup with Yvonne Lendl, ex-girlfriend who doesn't want to share custody with their child, another ex-girlfriend, of course, accusing him of domestic abuse. So there's a lot there with Zverev. By the way, this is reverse alphabetical order. Now, the next thing, by the way, that I want to, and I'm going to go longer on this than most of the comments. The last part of Andrew's comment is, I understand his antics makes for good drama and content. That's something I always stand by. I don't think a villain is bad for the sport at all. And I actually think usually that's good. Usually that's good for ratings, and as much as that can sound like, I don't know, overly like capitalistic, I don't think when someone is, let's say, widely disliked, I don't think that's necessarily, I don't think it hurts the sport. And I think a lot of fans like to say that it does. And I just don't agree with that. In fact, when LeBron James, the golden age of like NBA ratings in recent history is when LeBron went to the Heat, and everybody was absolutely pissed at LeBron James for the decision and making a super team. And I mean, it was just, that is when the ratings were amazing because everybody was tuning in, including myself, by the way. Everyone was kind of tuning in to watch LeBron lose. So, I don't think it's necessarily bad. Also, by the way, at events, I don't feel this way. There's an internet bubble where, like, Zverev takes a lot of heat. And I truly believe that it doesn't really reach, it doesn't permeate through, throughout kind of the casual, maybe U.S. Open attendee, for example. Because, like, if you go to the U.S. Open and you watch a Zverev match, there's no sense, at least last year, I didn't feel like there was a sense that the crowd didn't embrace him or didn't like him. I actually didn't sense that at all. So we also have to keep in mind, like, there's definitely an internet thing here that happens with Zverev. Okay, as I said, I'm going to be a lot shorter on most of these. From Tibor, thank you for being a member. I would say Zverev number one. Again, reverse alphabetical order. His constant questioning of calls, opponents, his whining. Shapo a close second for similar reasons, although his game is very exciting overall. RBA third, although a great fighter and wonderful tennis mind, you always know what he's going to do. Same patterns all over and over again. I don't find that entertaining. RBA, definitely one of the more predictable players out there. There's no doubt about that. Understood there. From Reeves, Sonego for the grunt, Delbonis for the serve. Besides his altitude, I have a really weird irk with Paire's... Oh, attitude, sorry. Besides his attitude, I have a really weird irk with Paire's backhand. His head yanks to the right on his swing, and something about it makes me not like to watch. This is hilarious. Sonego for the grunt. Okay. The only grunt that I've really had a huge issue with, and it's like bothered me, there's only been one, and that's old Azarenka. And she stopped doing this. But when she, way back, and this was probably like when she was at the pinnacle of her career, when she was a top 5 player, I found her grunt to just not sound like effort. Like, if a grunt sounds like effort, I don't have an issue, but she just sounded like she was singing. It was like a very Princess Peach vibe. Delbonis, you don't like him because of the ball toss? Is it the ball toss? It's too high? Paire does yank his head on his backhand. Yeah, That's true. He does do that. Yep. Hermano says Sinner, obviously a very good player, but his game is monotonous as it comes, and his strokes, despite being so powerful, are quite ugly to me. I don't find his strokes to be ugly personally. Pretty conventional, I would say. You know, I don't think there's much about his technique that really stands out. Doesn't look very different, but, you know, maybe I get the overall vibe, though. And I did see I've seen some other Sinner, right? Here we have one from Ugram. I'd say currently Sinner. His game style is pure brute force without any craft, and his personality is appalling. I don't know what you mean by that. If, say, Nadal is a bull and Djokovic is a wolf, then Sinner is a snake. Never liked snakes. But Djokovic is a self-proclaimed wolf, and Nadal is a self-proclaimed bull. At least Nike decided that he would be a bull. I don't know that Sinner's on board with the snake thing. I know that he endorses Parmigiano Reggiano. Now, as far as Sinner's personality goes, the only really off-court incident that I can think about is after when he criticized Frances Tiafoe for the, I don't know, on-court behavior. He thought, you know, Tiafoe was being disrespectful and showing him up a little bit. And I didn't agree with Sinner, but just because I don't agree with his criticism of Francis doesn't mean he's like a bad guy for it. So that's kind of where I stood on it. Tala, Gilles Simon, long rallies that never ended and usually did not have any brilliance in them. Admired his persistence and patience, but he played such long rallies and there was never any climax or breathtaking shots. The opponent usually just hit an unforced error in the end due to exhaustion. I actually think this is Gilles Simon's strategy. I think that's how he won matches, by being so incredibly, one way you could put it is boring. I think that was actually part of the difficulty in playing him, is he was the opposite of engaging. He did not show any emotion. He did not grunt. He did not make a lot of noise with his feet. Everything about his game was sleepy, right? He did not hit very hard. He did not do anything, you know, he didn't usually like go for much flash. But I almost think he lulled his opponents to sleep sometimes. He just sucked the energy out of a match. And I think that sometimes made Gilles Simon's opponents play worse. I actually think that used to happen. With that being said, I always found him to be a very talented shot maker. When he was given a target, when he had to hit a passing shot, when he had an opening to counterpunch from a defensive position, I was always very a big admirer of his racket skills, and also the way he moved was pretty incredible as well. I feel 100% confident saying Gilles Simon is the most boring player for me to watch. Him versus Medvedev at Queens 2019 might be the most boring match ever. I don't remember that one, but I can imagine that. I can see it in my head. When Simon played Monfils, it was often very painful because Monfils, for some reason, had a terrible habit of playing right into his opponent's strengths, and deciding to try to outlast Simon was his game plan. Nathan says probably Denis Shapovalov. While his shot-making ability can land him on the highlight reel from time to time, I find his shot selection and shot tolerance frustrating to watch. It becomes a bit of a coin flip sometimes. Will you see good Denis, or will you see the Denis that makes unforced errors in bunches? Any viewer's guess is as good as mine. I was very surprised with how many people said Shapovalov. I saw it a bunch, And it's funny because I'm sure you can ask many tennis fans who would tell you the most entertaining player, or one of them in all of tennis, is Denis Shapovalov. So it was shocking to see that there's plenty of polarization there. And yeah, like, I agree with the notion that if you're going to play very scratchy a lot of the time and there's going to be no rhythm in a match because you keep missing, that's definitely not good for entertainment value. So, I mean, when Shapovalov's playing well, I'd have trouble with any argument that suggested that he's not entertaining as far as the product that you get when he's playing well. But I totally get why it's frustrating to see him just miss a lot, sometimes against opponents that shouldn't be challenging him, and he's find himself in close matches. Rodrigo, any of the Servbots, guys like Isner, Karlovic, Opelka, and so on, you can imagine the reasons why, LOL. You probably like rallies, huh? You probably like rallies. Footfault Tennis, least favorite player for me would be Rublev. Aside from the legendary Bue, his game doesn't excite me. Even others that I feel similar about, such as Zverev and Sinner, when they face a top player, I'm intrigued. But with Rublev, not so much. I know what I'm getting. My other pick may surprise some. Monfils. Outside of his highlight reel shots and explosive athleticism, his ground strokes and core game have left me fairly disappointed. He's a great guy, of course, and perhaps I've just been lucky enough to see his worst performances, but they've left me quite bored, and I often just wait for the highlights instead of tuning in. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, Rublev again. There's some resistance to the power baseliner style. Emily, Rublev and Sinner are both boring to me. I find watching their matches painful. Maybe I have something against pale, skinny redheads. LOL. There you go again. However, speaking of the ginger topic, if you really don't want to see gingers in the top 10, top 15 at least, let's watch WTA, huh? Not a lot of gingers. Alison van Uytvanck, that's all I got. Now, I might be missing some, but that's all I got. Alison van Uytvanck. Bruno, Shapovalov is pretty irritating to watch. His inconsistency just surprises me more every time. One day he can play amazing and another terrible. Honorable mention of Raonic. Ugly strokes and boring game. Raonic frustrated me with how little he showed me that he cares. And I know he cares. And I know mostly, for the most part, all these guys care. But I didn't like that Raonic just, he would not give you anything emotionally. Here's a long one from Vishnu, and it's from a previous mailbag, so it's a bit of a change up. Hi, Gil. You have missed my question last time and told me to remind you. 2 questions. Let's imagine that you are reviewing the 2013 French Open final between Rafa and David Ferrer. Rafa was the favorite to win, and let's say you predicted Rafa to win in 4 sets in your preview video. What would be your emotions while watching the match? Would you support Ferrer because he is your favorite player, or would you want Rafa to win in order to get your prediction right? And now that Ferrer is not playing, in general nowadays, what would your emotions be like when watching a match between your favorite player and the player you predicted to win? I feel it's a very tricky situation to be in, and I am interested to hear your thoughts on this. In the Ferrer situation, that would have been a situation where I probably would have been rooting against my prediction without really any hesitation. And it would have helped that in that case, no one really would have been arguing with my prediction. And to be clear, if any of you don't know, I was not doing YouTube in 2013, so this situation didn't happen. But yeah, like, no, I don't think anybody would have said, like, bro, you hate Ferrer because you picked against him. So yeah, I think everyone, or you're an idiot for picking Nadal. So in that case, it would have been kind of everyone picking Nadal. It would have been including me, and I would have just been hoping Ferrer could shock the world. Am I ever really in that situation now? Not really, because I'm not really emotionally invested in any player to the extent that I was in Ferrer, and not even close. And that's just, the cognitive dissonance that is built up from constantly analyzing and predicting and making a concerted effort to be fair and to see matches with kind of through a neutral lens. Are there I'm not a robot, so of course there are players who I think I relate to more, or maybe I like their personalities more, or I like watching them more. But in general, there's nobody on tour who I'm turning on a match and I'm fist pumping or mad that they lost. I'm just not a fan of anyone like that. And again, that's what covering the sport will do to you. And anyone who's covered any sport knows this is just what happens. It's not something that you can control. It just happens. Even though some people don't believe me. And then the next question, I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's why was Ferrer your favorite player during the time when the big four were dominating? Ferrer was my favorite player for a reason that goes back to one of the reasons why I was attracted to tennis, why I wanted to play tennis in the first place. I felt like in a lot of sports, I didn't have a chance to be good because I was too small, plain and simple. Basketball, if you're short, you're at a disadvantage. Baseball, I was really good in the field. My glove was good. I was a good infielder. I couldn't hit for any power. Too small, didn't weigh enough to be a power hitter. Plain and simple. Big disadvantage there. When I was on the tennis court, when I stepped on the tennis court, I felt like I had a chance to be really, really good from a young age. And that's what inspired me, one of the things that inspired me to love it so much. Now, that wasn't all of it. It was also kind of the one-on-one mental responsibility that I relished. I wanted that battle. I loved that. I loved not having teammates and being out there on my own, trying to win myself, dealing with losing myself. I liked that. But other than that, it was being a smaller kid and feeling like this sport is not going to punish me for it. And, I'm going to have a chance here to be good. I'm not just going to lose because of my size. So obviously, connecting to Ferrer that way, it was kind of, how do I need to play? If I'm going to be an undersized player and I'm going to still be good, how do I need to play? And Ferrer kind of gave me that blueprint, and I tried to execute that and emulate that. As far as technique is concerned, my forehand looks like Ferrer's. My backhand doesn't. My serve doesn't. Just the idea of grinding, using my forehand, using my footwork to hit a lot of forehands from the backhand side, and being really, really tough and mentally strong was something that kind of just kindred me to Ferrer's spirit. And that is why I was a Ferrer fan. From Jose, I enjoy most of them. If I have to pick one, it would be Benoit Paire because of his lack of effort. That does not win you fans. Yeah, tanking does not win you fans. Racket Talk. Hi, Gil. My least favorite player to watch would be a toss-up between Riley Opelka and Adrian Mannarino. With Riley, it seems like more of the same of post-Roddick mold of American player. Huge serve. Most else is underdeveloped. Was hoping for a change in the pattern there. With Mannarino, I find his slow pace of play very nerve-wracking at times. It always puts me on edge. Is he going to hit an error or place the ball brilliantly? It's so funny that you mentioned Mannarino because I didn't enjoy watching him for a lot of years, and I think I'm starting to come around. This year, specifically, I feel like I'm starting to appreciate the things he does a little bit more. I kind of looked at him similar to Simone in the sense that, I don't mind a player who looks to outlast and keeps the ball on the court and wins on rally tolerance and consistency. In fact, I kind of love that. One of my favorite WTA players to watch is Sarah Sorribes Tormo. There's no doubt about that. But, you know, and the next person says Cam Norrie. I'm fine with that. But if you're going to be emotionless and you're not going to like even swing fast, so you're going to have that kind of style where you're grinding, but you're grinding kind of without racket speed. You're kind of massaging the ball, and you have a bit of a sleepy demeanor on the court. I never was too into that. Now I'm starting to see Mannarino as such a quirky player that I'm starting to really enjoy him with the way he produces his shots. And I'm starting to see more offense in his game. And I don't know if he's changed or if my view of him has just developed. I'm not sure which one it is. Sean says Norrie, horrible backhand and kind of dull, loopy forehand. Maybe aesthetically a horrible backhand. I would argue that his backhand, from an effectiveness standpoint, is not horrible. I actually think it's very good, and it bothers a lot of players. I like this, by the way. It's vanilla almond spiced chai from Trader Joe's. From VJ, watching Nadal, especially if you are a fan, is the most taxing thing. The amount of running and the amount of sweating, plus long, grueling rallies, really makes me sick. I prefer watching Nadal match highlights. Other players, too, play long rallies, but they are generally smooth and slick. You don't feel the pain of such rallies. With Nadal, I feel I am doing all that hard work. Are you a fan? Isn't the point that you kind of, as a fan, you suffer with your team, you suffer with the player, you ride the highs and lows? Isn't that the point? I thought that was the point. Maybe not. Donut McMuffin. Murray, Medi, and Zverev. I love Murray and Medi's personalities and respect their games tremendously, but I just find their forehands a bit of an eyesore, and that's obviously the most common shot, not including serves. Zverev I dislike for similar reasons, and I also find his serve kind of ugly, also off-court stuff. Also, if you don't mind, I didn't get to respond to the last mailbag and would love to get a response as to why I like watching Isner. There's something comical about watching him lumber around on return games, and I love how it's just like a national headline in my head every time he wins a return point. I also love his serve. It's not the most fluid motion, but I love watching the pure amount of torque he gets with his arm. I also like watching Isner. I like the tension in the matches. I hate when he plays a player who has no chance of breaking a serve. Like, if he plays a fellow big server, just, can we start at a tiebreak? I mean, Opelka and Isner, every set they play, I think, has gone to a tiebreak. So that's stupid. I hate that. Nothing we can do about it, but it's very silly and annoying. But if Isner is playing someone who doesn't serve as big and who's more return-centric, I like watching it. I'm into it. Got to be honest. And I love watching him serve. Watch Isner serve live. It's pretty awesome, I think. You know, I would recommend, if you go to an event, that you just, at least for a second, just watch Isner serve if you can, because it is something else to see. And I think his technique is gorgeous on his serve. So I don't think it's all height. I actually think he's got technically a really awesome and beautiful motion, and he hits every serve in the book. This is from Dean. If you asked this question a couple years ago, I would have said Mannarino or Cam Norrie, but I don't feel that way anymore. I could also give an easy answer and say Isner, but I'm actually going to go with Gilles Monfils. Probably won't be a popular pick, but hear me out. I've watched a number of his matches over the years where he gets, quote, injured partway through a match. He hobbles between points, bunts the ball, looks really sore, yet still moves quite well, lowers the crowd engagement, and his opponent's level usually drops significantly as well, making for terrible tennis to watch. All of a sudden, he is miraculously healed after running down a tricky ball and hitting an amazing passing shot. The crowd roars, pumping him up. He gains momentum and a mental edge over his opponent with the crowd behind him for the comeback. I know it's somewhat speculative to think that he's just being strategic and engaging in gamesmanship, but I feel there's enough evidence to support the claim. It just annoys me because it makes for really crappy tennis to watch and isn't in the true spirit of the game. And Dean, thank you for being a member. It's not speculative. I mean, Monfils plays possum. He does. It's just, he'll do it. There's no doubt about it. My perspective on it has always been, shame on the opponent. Like, if you are going to let Monfils kind of lull you into a false sense of security, that's on you. Like, you have to know what's going on when Monfils is giving away a set. But in the best of 5 format, he's had endurance issues. So I think he's not doing these things, and he's not playing possum ever to be disrespectful, or obviously he's not doing it to make fans have to watch crappy tennis. He's doing it because he's conserving energy, and it's his way of conserving energy, and that's because he's had endurance issues. So that's where it comes from, but he definitely will often give away sets, and it'll look like he's injured. But at this point, you have to know that he's not, and you have to just keep your intensity and your focus as an opponent of Monfils. And if you don't do that and you lose, guess what? I'm not going to say, well, Monfils played possum and like that's not fair, or that's bad sportsmanship, or that's gamesmanship. No, it's not. It's just tennis, and shame on you for falling for it. Kidding the hallway. Medvedev, Benoit Paire. I just can't watch ugly strokes. Even if the player themselves is an awesome player, I just can't get around strokes that aren't aesthetically pleasing. You know what you want, and you know what you like. Respect. You hate ugly strokes. Can't watch him. Won't watch him. GMAC, Nick Kyrgios. I think he's extremely talented, and I really enjoy his style of play. But over time, I've grown tired of his on-court antics. Deep down, I think he's afraid of what might happen if he commits to tennis. He's afraid of caring and putting himself on the line because he might lose. Instead, he focuses on being an entertainer, although he does it in the most obnoxious way possible. He almost always blames others when things don't go his way, and it's an awful quality. I'm sure that he has struggled with his own personal issues, and deep down, he's probably not a bad person, but on court, his behavior is quite unbearable. I think the last thing you said is pretty spot on, and I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. There seems to be, some people are like, Nick's a terrible guy and a terrible person. But I don't think there's much evidence of that other than maybe some questionable things that his girlfriends, his significant others have revealed on social media. But clearly, I think he's had some issues personally and mentally, and he's been open about that. So that's not speculative at all. That's out there. So probably deserves some, an element of compassion, sympathy, understanding, etc. However, that doesn't change the fact that he does do what you're describing, and when he's losing, he's pretty much going to find something to start complaining about, to the point of it being pretty exhausting. At the U.S. Open, he lost to Roberto Bautista Agut in the first round, and he was like mad about the location of the towel box and talked about it for 2 sets. And when, with that kind of thing, yeah, it's like, what are you doing? Just play. Corda. I found it a very boring personality, and I just can't get enthusiastic about the match when he plays. Everything does not really seem to matter to him. He tries to play good, but if he loses, that's probably fine to him as well. He always has the same kind of lightweight/innocent vibe around him. He doesn't give away much as far as emotion, And he doesn't really have a game that I think he'll be able to get away with that. So like Nishikori is similar. Nishikori doesn't show much emotion. But I do think people really do enjoy his tennis enough that I don't think it's really hurt his popularity. For Corda, I think it might. And for Sinner, I think it might. But Sinner's starting to change. Andre. Hey, my least favorite to watch are Steffi Graf and Rod Laver. Maybe Borg too. The TV quality is bad every time I watch for some reason. Terrible TV quality. You're right. That's true. Yeah. Honestly, I've never been a fan of watching any of the big three. They are the greatest of all time and can do things that nobody else can. But I don't know. I always like supporting the underdog or just players I like more. Being a bit younger at 17, I've also missed their prime, so I don't fully appreciate the hype as much. I love Murray because he's come back from so much and is an underdog, but the big three are so dominant, I find it boring. Once again, I know they are amazing, but I like not knowing who's going to win. It's like watching prime Usain Bolt sprint. You know he will win, so it's not really interesting to me. But I know that some people won't get that because they are diehards. For me personally, I'm not really a fan. Like who you like, guys. Not hating, just stating. Not hating, just stating. Never heard that one. I like it. I get it. Look, first week of a slam, I don't want to be on the big court watching the top seeds. You know, I've never been someone who has been happy that the main broadcast feeds, and by the way, I understand that from a ratings perspective, this is the play. Like what the main broadcasts do by showing Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic on center court in their first and second round matches, that is best for ratings. Like I have no doubt in my mind that that is best for ratings. But for me, I'll pass. I'd way rather find a more evenly matched matchup on the outer courts. So this whole idea, I understand it. Now, when the big three clash against each other or fellow elite players, if you said you didn't like that, then I'd kind of think you're a bit crazy. But I understand what you're getting at. Last one is from Kai Morris. Berrettini. While of course he's a great player, I find his play style very repetitive with the big serve in the forehand and can only really win points consistently for those two shots and the drop shot every now and then. Although he is a very likable guy, and I do enjoy him when he plays some of the top guys, especially his 3 matches against Alcaraz. Though that might just be because Alcaraz is just exciting to watch. Edit also with Berrettini in general, I feel like you know what you're going to get from him and you can fairly easily predict who he will lose to and who he will beat. That last part has frustrated me a little bit with Berrettini, with kind of knowing who he's going to win against and lose against. And I don't love that, and hopefully that changes. Berrettini is fascinating because he does have a play style that a lot of people do not enjoy, but he is super popular. People like him. He's, an amicable personality off the court, and he's model material, which doesn't hurt at all. I'm driving through LA and I'm seeing Berrettini's face. And that is not because he made a Wimbledon final. This has been your least favorite players. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.